Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 10, Episode 78. He's Dave Bryan, Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being with us this Monday, Steelers Nation. Just a quick programming note here to kick things off. This will be the only podcast of the week. Dave's going to be flying out back to Florida for the rest of the week, so we'll be back, the following Monday. And Dave, you said you got some movies to watch. What do you got queued up for the plane ride tomorrow?
Yeah, it's that Yesterday, the one about the Beatles
one?
Yeah, I admit, I had my wife pretty close to going and seeing that actually when it came out, but obviously the timing of it coming out wasn't great with football season, and one thing led to another, and it really has to be something for me to put in to go see it,
Mm-hmm.
But the great thing is that the theater that we go to is in the South Point Hotel and Casino. Shout out to South Point. One of my favorite. If I do leave the house, you can probably find me there. But the good thing is, so that's still a fairly new casino. They obviously got a full blown theater in it, and it's never full. I mean, never. Even these new releases when they come out. We went and saw the new Star Wars when it came out. There were like 8 people in there. It makes you wonder how they do end up making some money in there. But anyway, we didn't go see that right when it came out. So that's one of them. And I haven't decided. You got any suggestions for me for the other one to download?
I am the wrong guy to ask. I watched Baby Driver the other day, which came out, I think, like 3 years ago. It was decent. It was a good movie. You ever heard of that?
No, I never have.
No.
Is it action adventure or what?
Yeah, it's just about this. I don't know how to describe it. It's just kind of a driving movie, action robbery movie. It's kind of cool. But did you follow the Oscars yesterday? Any shout outs? I'm sure you were glued to the TV.
Yeah, no, not at all. The damn pompous people, no. I kidded my wife too when went to bed last night. I said, "Well, what did you think about the Oscars?" And she didn't even know they was on last night. So.
Anyway, well, safe travels to you again. Our only podcast for the week, but we got some news to talk about today, and the news that came in yesterday, while not official by the team yet, by all reports, by all indications, Steelers have a new wide receivers coach. His name is Bryan McClendon from South Carolina. Previously served as the receivers coach and the offensive coordinator. I believe he was actually demoted in December for what was going to be 2020, demoted from OC to be just the receivers coach, but now he's in Pittsburgh as the receivers coach, just 36 years old. So your reaction to the hiring of Bryan McClendon?
Yeah, obviously not official by the team yet, but the report circulated real quick out of one of the beat writers out of Columbia, South Carolina. There, I think one of the TV hosts there. So we'll wait and see make sure that the team confirms it, and you would think they would do so, today or tomorrow. But if indeed he is the guy, I mean, it's hard not to like the choice there. McClendon appears to be kind of a Daryl Drake disciple, if you will. So that that's one thing. Evidently he stayed in close contact with Daryl Drake, for several years. Once he got out of college, talking about McClendon, he signed on as an undrafted free agent with the Chicago Bears in what year was it? 2006, I think.
Mm-hmm. 06.
And Daryl Drake was, I believe, the wide receivers coach for Chicago at the time. So Drake must have made one heck of an impression on him during that short time, because McClendon, I don't think, didn't make the 53-man roster that year, and I don't think he was ever heard from in the NFL after that. Obviously, as you recapped, spent a lot of time early on in his college career back at his alma mater in Georgia. There, coached running backs, coached wide receivers there. I think he was a recruiting coordinator there as well. Fast forward to his time at South Carolina, coaching wide receivers, obviously there the last 3 or 4 years I think it's been since he's been there on top of it. So he's got enough. He's paid his dues. It seems like down there at the college level now, and still on the younger side, which is good, which should have him be able to relate to, today's NFL player, but at the same time kind of have ingrained in him, hopefully that kind of that Daryl Drake, teaching style on top of it. So not a lot not to like, I don't think, as far as I can find so far on him.
And he's coached a lot of great players, whether that's Todd Gurley at Georgia, I believe Isaiah Crowell as well at Georgia. Look at South Carolina, Deebo Samuel, who's one of my just draft crushes last year. Bryan Edwards, who we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth here in a little bit, Dave. It is a bit of a departure from the father figure receiver coaches they've had in previous years, whether you're talking Richard Mann or Daryl Drake or Ray Sherman as the interim wide receivers coach last year, but a guy that seems to have a really solid resume. And I think you've seen this team make a really strong effort to focus on hiring from the college ranks. A lot of guys are getting their first NFL job courtesy of Mike Tomlin, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think you're seeing an emphasis on some youthfulness with guys like Eddie Faulkner and Brian McClendon, and a focus on, maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not, but on the recruiting side, I think Faulkner was a recruiting coordinator, McClendon recruiting coordinator, and there's probably some sort of value in that and how you talk to guys and how you learn and how you teach and can kind of convince guys to buy in. I think there's probably some sort of aspect that's worth mentioning there. So don't know a ton about him, obviously, but again, like you said, was coached by Daryl Drake in Chicago for the brief couple months he was in the NFL. The report was they kept in contact every week, talked every week since then, basically. So had a really long-lasting friendship. And I think, you had to find someone, obviously, to fill that position, and it sounds like a good hire, as you said.
Yeah, and another thing I think we're seeing here is Randy Fichtner being surrounded, by another person that's got, some run game, pass game coordinating kind of stuff. In their history as well, too. So not just positional coaching, but, able to hopefully contribute in game planning aspect of it. And, obviously I think there's a little bit of a bonus there with McClendon having run game coordinator, in his resume, so to speak. And we all know, or should already know by now, Matt Canada and kind of his background and what all he's done. So, the more minds that you can get, the more help when it comes to kind of those areas. Look, Randy Fichtner, I think now can't complain about not having enough, help in that room. Now comes the point where, put it all together and hopefully get it executed,
Yeah, I just think there's value in guys that like McClendon that have experience coaching multiple positions. So even if they're not directly involved in putting the game plan together, they can at least see the whole picture. So when they're talking to receivers about run schemes, they kind of understand that perspective better of how a receiver needs to block on a certain run because he's been a running backs coach and he's coached that position. And so I think you kind of just help, open the eyes of the receivers. And I think you just help explain things better whenever you've coached kind of multiple spots along the offense. So yeah, we'll see. Again, we reported back at the Senior Bowl they were going to make a hire outside the organization. That's what's happened today. Had no idea who the hire was going to be, but it's Brian McClendon, and the team should announce it probably within the next couple of days.
Do you know if McClendon, I'm sure he was probably at the Senior Bowl, right?
I don't know. He might have been, but I could not tell you.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll wait now to see if the team ultimately, announces it, which we would think they would at this point.
Right. Just trying to get any other thoughts there with McClendon, and that should be the last move for the coach.
I just lost you, Alex.
All right, sorry, my Skype froze up. You got me back now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Skype's being weird today. That should be the last hire for the coaching staff for the season. I think no other changes are going to be expected.
I wouldn't think so, right? I mean, that should have us up to par on everything.
Mm-hmm. So the additions were Matt Canada as the quarterbacks coach and Brian McClendon as the receivers coach. And as far as I'm aware, no departures. In terms of the coaching staff, lost some guys, Samir Suleiman in the front office, but the coaching staff really remains intact with additions and no subtractions.
Right.
All right, Dave. Well, speaking of McClendon in South Carolina, you broke down so quickly last night was Bryan Edwards from South Carolina. And a guy that's probably going to get mocked to the Seagulls in a lot of drafts, considering some potential in need there, and obviously South Carolina connection. So, what did you learn about Bryan Edwards and his game?
Yeah, look, I mean that instantly became kind of the talk. I think on Sunday after the news broke about McClendon was he coached Debo Samuel there at South Carolina, and they got another young wide receiver entering the draft this year, and Bryan Edwards, who really look. I mean, I don't think you see him on any top. Definitely not in any top 10 wide receiver list that I've seen, and I don't think really you see him as a name that shows up in any of the top 15 list. Kind of floating around some of the main ones right now as well. When you look initially at his stats, you kind of you kind of wonder why, because he definitely had a production there at South Carolina in 4 years, and when you initially look at his stats, you see 234 receptions for 3,045 yards and 22 TDs, and you think, man, how the heck did I miss this guy? The other thing that sticks out, assuming it's true, he's still only 21 years old, and he played 4 years at South Carolina, so that's kind of rarish as well too, to have someone, once again, I'm at the mercy of what the internet tells me on the age, but I can't find anything that says otherwise. That I think, in fact, he doesn't even turn 21 or 22 until after the draft sometime. Mm-hmm. He was a one-time team captain or a sometime team captain. I didn't dig to find out how often, if it was for the full season or whatnot, but I have seen team captain next to his name this past season. He was a Senior Bowl invite originally. He had to back out, I think, because of something going on with his knee or something along those lines. And then, obviously, his position coach was Brian McClendon, who's now with the Steelers, so that's going to be another box that's checked with him as well, too. So I think when you look at him just, as a broad brush kind of overview and not getting into his tape just yet, you say, this looks like kind of a guy, and plus he's 6'3" on top of it. Kind of looks like a kid that, this will definitely be a kid that, the Steelers have some interest in here. Now, when you get into the tape, I had kind of a what I was expecting in my head based on just kind of watching a couple of highlights to start with him. I expected to find a receiver that maybe stretched the field a little bit more, caught the ball down the field a little bit more than what he actually did, or at least in the games that I contextualize. And I made sure to contextualize 4 games where he had quite a few targets and against good competition. So I chose 4 SEC games, and those 4 games that I contextualized were against Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. So that gives you an idea kind of what I went after there. And in those 4 games, I think he was targeted 41 or 42 times. He had 30 receptions in those games for 318 yards and a touchdown. After going through all those and doing the intended air yards and doing the yards after the catch and all like that, I was kind of disappointed with the numbers that I came away with that. His average intended air target distance was a mere 7.85 yards past the line of scrimmage, and that's not very far, for a wide receiver. Additionally, his average completed air yard distance in those 4 games was just 5.57 yards past the line of scrimmage. You're thinking a big guy, a guy that you see some of the highlights with him catching the ball downfield, you're expected to kind of find more of that, He had 151 yards gained after the catch, and I guarantee you, quite a few of those catches originated behind the line of scrimmage. I was kind of floored with how they used him. There's a lot of wide receiver screens in these 4 games, with him catching the football, obviously, on either side and behind the line of scrimmage. And then they used him quite a bit, 4 or 5 times at least, or 3 or 4 or 5 times at least, on some of these shovel passes, where he's coming in motion. That play that the Steelers run with Juju. juju.
Mm-hmm.
Coming back across the coming back in motion and kind of the flip pass to him. He had, there's a handful of those just in those 4 games that I did as well too. So obviously those count as catches, and obviously those count as catches behind the line of scrimmage. Now he did show that he can get downfield, and boy, you'd be hard pressed to watch any of his highlights and not come across that catch that he made against Tennessee down at the goal line. Have you seen it? The one kind of the OBJ type one-handed catch of his?
Yeah, that was eye popping.
Yeah, that was definitely eye-popping. He's got another contested catch off kind of like a flea flicker play in the middle of the field against I forget who. I think it was against Florida as well too. After going through all of his, these 4 games, I kind of come away with thinking, man, I probably need to look at this kid's 2018 tape as well too, and contextualize, another 3 or 4 games out of there to make sure to see how he was, if he was used kind of in that same manner there. I was really hoping to find a kid that would get down the field a little bit more, but when you go through the catches that I broke down of his, let's see, where is it total here? I'm trying to find out the ones. Most of his receptions were once again well inside the 10 yards. How many of them? 15 of these 30 receptions that he had in his contextualization came at or behind the line of scrimmage, and I'm trying to find what the actual number was there. The other one's caught past 10 yards line. More than 10 yards. I don't have the number there, but anyway, but 15 of those 30, which was half, came behind the line of scrimmage. So that kind of caught me by surprise there.
So how would you classify him? Do you consider him a vertical threat, a possession guy, and where does he fit in the NFL? Because I thought he was going to be some sort of Z-type, stack, receiver, get vertical, but it sounds like he might not be that guy.
Yeah, that's why I think I got to still look at, normally I come out of these feeling pretty good about what a player is going to be, but because it was such an opposite from what I found, I want to make sure that he was kind of used that same way in 2018. Because once again, we're talking about a kid that's got over 200 receptions in college,
Yeah.
And I understand that they had a little bit of a quarterback issue, last year there, at South Carolina. Then obviously the year before that, Debo was there and was kind of the I guess the main guy, if you will. Now, when you look at just his averages, his stats alone from 2018, it would tell you that he has a little bit longer yards per reception there. But even so, we're not talking anything up in the 17 or 18 yard, per reception area. But he does have long receptions in his resume there. So, is he just? I don't think he's going to be one of those burners. At least what I can tell on tape, he doesn't feel like that long strider gazelle type. You know who he kind of reminds me of a little bit, and I'm horrible at doing comparisons, and this might even be out of your kind of age realm anyway. Bryan Edwards,
the Browns receiver.
Yeah, kind of, and what Bryan Edwards with the Jets for a little bit, I think as well too. What did he measure in at?
He was a big guy.
And maybe it's because this kid's name was Bryan Edwards.
Yeah, there's a lot of Bryans and Braylons today that was confusing the heck out of me.
Bryan Edwards was 6'3", 214. He's the first guy I kind of thought of there. Not a burner type, but a guy that could make a catch downfield, a guy that could catch. Another thing you'll see about this Bryan Edwards is a lot of quick slants. Off the line as well too, around that 7 to 10 yard range too. But he has made catches down the field. It's just not with the guy with that kind of size. I was expecting to find more of that. So I kind of would like to plead incomplete on him, even though I just watched 41 targets of his. I think his 2018 tape needs to be gone through. Let's see what kind of percentage of those throws were, let's say, 5 yards or less beyond the line of scrimmage there, and see if that's who he is. Odds are that is probably who he is, but just to make sure. I came away just initially off this 4-game contextualization thinking, okay, well, this guy probably isn't top 3 rounds. I'm thinking more late 4th, 5th round kind of wide receiver here.
Yeah, which fits in well for Pittsburgh. And again, with how deep this receiver class is, it's going to, like I said before, it's going to push down a lot of these names, including Edwards. Is it fair to say he's an outside guy as opposed to an inside guy?
Yeah. I don't view him as, I think he can work out the slot.
Okay. Did he do a little bit of that?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he can play that big slot. That juju kind of role. But I think predominantly you see him, on the outside, and on both sides.
Yeah, that's really good info on Edwards. You know what I was thinking of too, Dave, was speaking of South Carolina, you hire McClendon. You know who else is from South Carolina on that staff? Matt Sims was at South Carolina, I believe, with Edwards for the first or second year that Edwards was there as the quarterback's coach, but working with the quarterback. So another South Carolina connection for you.
There you go. You draw a couple of lines back there.
Yeah, so I'm going to guess, and do you still have a mock draft coming out before you leave?
Yeah, I'm going to try to get it done and up either today or by first, to go up in the morning there.
I'm going to guess Bryan Edwards finds his way into that mock draft for you.
No, actually, well,
No?
look, when I first went to him and started contextualizing, I thought, I think I'm gonna put him in here. But after looking at him, I've got another choice to go in wide receiver earlier in the draft instead.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I'm excited to check that out either later today.
I
or
think
tomorrow.
he could, if they hold off on wide receiver and don't get one until 4th or 5th round, I definitely think Edwards is going to have to be on that list.
Okay. Well, one guy I think that is on your list has to be Charlie Woerner, maybe in that 7th round. You had the player profile on him the other day. What are your final impressions on Charlie?
Yeah, I watched way too much tape on him, Alex. I just, because look, I mean, he's just a guy that's not being talked about right now, and I'm having a hard time understanding why. Is it just because nobody's gotten around to his tape yet? I think that has a lot to do with it, to be quite honest with you, because look, this is a guy that, and thank goodness, I would have been kind of crushed had he not been invited to the combine. Him getting an invite to a combine, I think, speaks a lot. Especially, because look, they don't, that list of tight ends usually isn't very long at the combine, and the fact that he got invited there, I think, speaks volumes to that. This is a tight end that stood out at the NFLPA game. Myself and Tom Mead had a little bit of a discussion on him, while you were down there at the Senior Bowl on top of there. Now, when you get into his tape, and I have watched a lot of his tape, like I said, probably way too much. He's got that nice tight end, size and build at 6'4.5", 245. The only real drawback about his measurables that I found, and this of course is just coming off of the NFLPA bowl measurements, was the fact that his arms are probably about 1.25 inches to, not as long as they should be. But when you look at him top to bottom, good athleticism out, on display in the open field. Really, he wasn't targeted a lot. Obviously, if you look at the amount of catches that he had, what do you have? Something like 30. Where do I have it here? Believe it or not, I found all of his catches, and I had that video up in the post as well too. 34 career receptions at Georgia for 376 yards and a touchdown there. Like I said, a little bit shorter arms at 31 3/8 inch according to his NFLPA bowl. weigh in. Man, I think the first thing when you turn on his tape is his athleticism and his ability to block out in open space, especially on a perimeter. Good, especially the last 2 seasons, a lot of that on his tape. Very adequate into the line and move blocker. He's run that split zone and has been effective with that. Those kind of blocks there, even kind of stationary in the line of scrimmage. He's done a good job of that. And I think I said this to you the other day. I think Charlie Woerner might have been the best blocking tight end in the SEC last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that speaks a lot. If indeed it is true, the other thing I think that stuck out about him on his receptions, and once again he wasn't thrown to a lot, is he maybe 1 or 2 drops, I think, throughout his entire career. Now, remember, this is a kid that came out of high school as a kind of a decorated wide receiver. All right.
Did he have big numbers in high school?
50. His senior year, last year, had 50-something catches for. Oh, I don't know if I still got got that article up here with some of his numbers. Oh no, here it is. It's kind of small writing here, so let me put my eyeballs on here.
I'm just curious what numbers are.
Let's see. Rivals 4-star prospect, number 23, tight end nationally, number 8 prospect in Georgia. Where was he? Where's his stats here? Hauled in 57 receptions his senior season to finish with 150 receptions during his high school career. Caught 15 touchdowns and ran for another as a senior.
Okay, so there was production at some point, obviously at the high school level, but at least he had something on his resume at some point in his career.
Right. Was an all-state at defensive back as well, too. Played some safety, accumulated almost 2,700 receiving yards in 4 seasons of varsity football there in Rayburn, Georgia, is where he went to high school at there. So, yeah, he had production there. Just Georgia didn't use the tight end, man.
Sure.
And they don't for some reason. The other thing that stuck out is while he wasn't targeted much, he was a good bad ball catcher. Unfortunately, because, and here's one thing that I learned about Jake Fromm going through this tape. Jake Fromm's not very accurate, or at least wasn't accurate when throwing to his tight ends there. So it'll be interesting when we get a preview on him to look at Jake Fromm's accuracy there. But smart player, I think once he does get the football out in his hands, out in space, a couple of nice runs he had there. However, in most of his catches, not a huge yak guy. Goes down first contact is one thing, but I mean, once again, we're talking about 30-something catches here. So not a lot to go on overall there. I think he could use a little bit more sand in his pants, a little bit more core strength, but they're probably not a tight end coming out.
Right.
That you probably couldn't say that about. Obviously, we don't have a large sample size when evaluating his route running. Overall, a little bit of all 22 tape out there, but when it comes to him actually getting targeted and looking at those routes, there's just not a lot there. So I go back and stand on what I said. I think the last time we talked about him is. This is a kid I think you're going to hear more about as the pre-draft process goes on, and I wouldn't be surprised when the smoke clears. We're talking about a 5th or a 6th round, tight end here, because look, he's not George Kittle, okay? He's not blocking guys into the first row, of the stands. But I mean, there is a lot there when it comes to his blocking out on the perimeter, and you can't help but watch his tape and think, man, the Steelers might be interested in him. Now, is he going to be a top 10 tight end in this class? Probably not, just because he wasn't thrown to a lot. But when you look back at the who was the kid, Moreau, the kid out of LSU last year, that the Steelers had interest in. You would think to some degree they had to have some interest in George Kittle. A couple of years ago. This is the kind of guys, at least that the Steelers have looked at in the past, and it's going to be hard kid to bypass there in the 5th, 6th round if they haven't taken a tight end by then.
Yeah, well, hopefully they have taken a tight end by then. But yeah, I mean, there's value in blocking, and that could elevate his draft stock. I'm guessing Warner's the type of guy that the NFL likes a lot more than the media analysts and the draftniks will like because of that value on blocking. What's his height weight again? 245. What's his height?
He is 6'4.5", 245, so he's right
Yeah.
there in the wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about Drew Sample last year from Washington, who I think had like 46 career receptions for the Huskies, most of that coming a senior year, and he goes, I think, in the second round to Cincinnati because of his size. He's a bigger guy, I think, than Warner, but because of that blocking ability, and it's so rare to find. I mean, if you're one of the best blocking tight ends in the SEC, probably one of the best blocking tight ends in general if you're doing that at the SEC level. So yeah, interesting name, and again, somebody I'm guessing the NFL likes a lot more than maybe what the media is going to portray.
George Kittle coming out of Iowa, 48 catches, 700.
That was it.
That was it. 48.
I know split time with Fant.
Right. And look, I mean, this kid as well too is split time with Wolf. You know.
Okay.
At least last year, and then before that they had that's the other thing about Charlie Woerner here is he wasn't an every down player for some reason either.
Mm-hmm. That's strange.
And that was a bit interesting too. Because they would use Wolf in some situations. I think they had a third tight end that they occasionally use over there as well too. But George Kittle coming out and look, I mean, 42 of those 48 catches came in his final two seasons at Iowa. There, he only had 6 catches for 133 yards, I think, with Kittle in those first 2 years there. So Kittle coming out, now he did have 10 touchdowns coming out, whereas Warner only has the one there. But that might be. I mean, we all know about George Kittle's blocking coming out of college, or at least most of us did, or some of us did, or at least I did.
You whittle that group down pretty quick.
Yeah. So I think the fact that Kittle probably wasn't thrown to, maybe you're right. Maybe blocking just isn't as valued as much, in today's NFL as far as these tight ends go here. But mark my words, I will be shocked if we're talking about Charlie Woerner going undrafted or drafted in the 7th round. I think somebody's going to get a good tight end there in the 5th or 6th round.
All right, fair enough. We'll see if he shows up in your mock draft in the next day or two.
And I know I've talked way too much about him already, but you know me and tight ends. Yeah,
especially ones that can block. I don't think blocking is undervalued. I think that it's undervalued by the media. I don't think it's undervalued by the NFL, and that's why you see some of those guys like Sample, like others that go higher. I think Warner could be one of those guys that end up getting selected higher than maybe the draftniks anticipate.
Yeah, look, I mean, like I said, I think this is a 5th or 6th round kid easily. I'm excited about him going to the combine now. I mean, if he can put up some nice triangle numbers there, and he ought to be fairly strong. Evidently, he was a pretty good track and field player, and did the discus and the shot put, and I think had a couple of weight room records there. Wow. At Georgia as well too. So don't be surprised. Look, I want some sort of credit there when this kid blows up on Twitter. Okay.
What do you think he'll run if he had to kind of guess?
Yeah,
I'm sure
look,
he could get in a straight line a whole lot on your tape, but
it's hard to tell. But it's going to be under 5 easily. I
hope so.
4 point. I don't know. I'll go out and say 4.78.
Okay, yeah, that seems. I'm assuming he's not going to test fantastically, but I'm just curious if it's going to be a Zach Gentry level or a little bit. Jesse James ran 4.83. Get under. Get in the 4.7s, and I think you can live with that.
I think I will be surprised if he doesn't run under 4.8.
Okay.
Just judging kind of, and you know how hard it is to kind of judge these guys on TV tape.
Sure.
with the speed and all like that. But it looks like he gets downfield pretty good, So I mean, if he's right at that 4.70, that'll raise some eyebrows.
Yeah, if he can definitely get close to that. I just wanted to kind of ballpark it to get a gauge for what to expect from him from an athleticism standpoint.
What did Kittle run? You remember?
I don't. I can look it up, though. Probably faster than that, I'm guessing. He ran 4.52, so
wow.
Warner's not going to touch that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. At least it doesn't feel like he's gonna touch
Yeah.
that.
Kittle had a great workout. 35-inch vert, 11-foot broad, 7-second 3-cone, 18 on the bench. Really strong workout. Warner's not going to hit those numbers, but that's okay. I mean, we don't need to compare him to George Kittle because very few guys are George Kittle.
Yeah, what was Kittle's arms?
33 and an eighth. So
And
good,
what did
good
I
line.
and didn't I say this kid was 31 something?
Yeah, I think that lack of length is really gonna hurt him.
Yeah.
When you're trying to project out a blocker without great length, this is tough and decent size, but not like fantastic size. He's not a 260-pound tight end.
Look, he's good off the. Like I said, I think he's going to project well as probably potentially the best SEC blocking tight end there. But you do see him fall off, on end of the line blocks and sometimes get ragdolled out, by some of those larger defensive ends.
Right. All right. Well, we'll see what he runs. We'll see if he ends up in your mock draft. To kind of switch gears here, Dave, we're kind of slowly getting through our positional overview for the Pittsburgh Steelers to defensive line. The last time we talked about it a few podcasts ago. We'll flip to the outside linebackers today. Probably not a ton to talk about with the group, and we've talked about Bud Dupree so much, and we're just kind of in a holding pattern to see where exactly he lies in terms of, we assume worst case scenario, he'll get the tag, get a long-term deal, get reached pre-tag or maybe post-tag if that's what it comes to. But that's a situation. There really isn't a whole lot probably to talk about with that group.
Right. I mean, look, we fully expect now for them to tag Bud Dupree.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll see what happens. Obviously they'll have until, a couple weeks before the start of training camp to get him signed to a long-term contract. I think that's another thing that we forget about here is the deadline that comes along with that franchise tag.
Mm-hmm.
Couple weeks. Usually, what is it? Middle of July, like the 13th,
Yeah, like the 15th or something,
whatnot, where they had the deadline to sign franchise tag players to extensions by then. So you obviously would tag him first, and then you can work on a long-term deal, and then hopefully get that done by the deadline there. And if not, then you have to carry that huge number on through the season. The way the Steelers had to do with Le'Veon Bell there, but it's hard to imagine this team not going at least a tag route with Bud Dupree, and the good thing about that is we will know that well before the draft.
Do you know when the first day the team's going to apply the tag is? I know the Steelers won't do it on the first day, but that window opens up in a couple weeks.
Yeah. I'll have to pull up the important dates here to give you the exact. Hold on here.
I mean, obviously the new league year begins mid-March, so it's going to happen before then. I think Steelers usually put the tag on with Bell like a couple days before the new league year or the deadline.
February 21st, 25th is the first day for clubs to designate the franchise or transition tag players, and March the 10th is the deadline to designate franchise or transition players. So you got 10. How many? We've got 2 weeks, I think. It's a 2-week window when it comes to the tags there. So they probably wouldn't do it on day one.
No.
But probably March 5th or right around in there. Is when they would do it. But look, I mean, you would think that that's the way they're going to do it because there's just not too much behind. Right now, obviously Ola Adaney is behind, and Skipper is on that depth chart as well too. We expect that depth chart to be void of Anthony Chickillo here come the start of the new league year on top of it. So the team's not going to have money they might address the position with a much lower level, minimum type player, but there's not going to be many of those out there, I don't think, that fit what the Steelers normally look for. That player would obviously have to be able to play special teams as well, too, one would think. And then, of course, this team at some point could try to address the edge position during the draft. So their hands are almost pretty much tied, especially not having a first-round draft pick this year. If you didn't tag Bud Dupree and let him test free agency and let him walk off that way, you're sitting there at 49 overall, hoping, almost got yourself painted into a corner where you'd have to take the best edge available.
Yeah. Right, right.
and then hoping that edge works out. We all know that Steelers don't like to work that way. So yeah, I mean, I think all the things that we've been told and kind of looking at the big picture and the way the barn's being painted here, it's going to be Bud Dupree getting the tag, and then obviously you'll have Daney and Skipper trying to compete for a spot, and I'd imagine 2 or 3 others are added to the mix at some point, maybe one during the draft to help compete at that spot as well.
Sure, it's possible they find a low-level free agent, though I could not find one. And kind of my initial look across free agency, I think drafting one late on day 3 is possible. Where are you at on Ola? Let's assume that Dupree is tagged. That's almost guaranteed. Let's assume that Chicolo is cut. That's almost guaranteed. Now you have Ola, the only guy with really Sunday experience on this roster outside of Tuzar's little cup of coffee with the Giants. It's kind of been a bit disappointing. He hasn't made more noise, Ola has these first 2 years, and been some injuries and just hasn't been able to really climb that depth chart enough. And obviously it's tough playing behind Dupree and Watt, especially after the year those two guys have had. But I thought we would learn more and see more out of Ola Daney these first 2 years.
Yeah, a little bit disappointed not seeing more. And then the fact that he couldn't get on the field, ahead of Chicolo in a lot, especially Chicolo had to miss a couple of weeks there due to the off-field issues. But even so, Daney really didn't benefit too terribly much from that, from a snap count perspective there. The jury's still out on him. I mean, look, you go back and look at some of his obviously his preseason. His preseason tape from his rookie season, and you think, man, maybe something here with this kid. But we really just haven't seen. Obviously battled that injury during his rookie season, hurt him. Cost him some time. So really, it's kind of an incomplete on him.
Yeah, but he'll be in there to compete. Obviously, he's got a good chance to try to elevate that role. Though, again, if Watt and Dupree are going to play 90% of the time, then maybe it doesn't mean a whole lot because there just aren't a lot of snaps for the taking. But yeah, I mean, have you looked at any sort of edge guy for agency they could draft late, or any name that you kind of like, or a free agency or draft pick that you're kind of keen in on?
No, unless they went with that Bradley and
it's a high pick to invest in. Though.
Yeah, that you would probably have to get him in the second round. With that pick. Other than that, look, we talked about Uche, the kid out of Michigan, right. But I mean, you can't. I don't think there's enough there on his tape that you can go, oh yeah, he's definitely going to be an edge that we can catch. I think people are overvaluing Uche from the tape that I've seen so far on him. No, I mean, you look at the edge class overall, past the first couple rounds here.
It's not a great class.
No, it's not. To me, at least, it looks like he gets a little thin real quick.
Yeah, I like Uche. I probably like him more than you, but just knowing what Pittsburgh drafts, when they go edge, they usually go with bigger guys that have a stronger upper body and just bigger guys in general. Dupree, Watt, Ola's not a big guy, but he's a strong guy that has good functional strength. Uche isn't that type of guy, so it's hard to see the Steelers taking Uche for at least that value. There's additional value he has in terms of his off-ball work and coverage work and stuff like that, but he doesn't profile this typical Steelers edge rusher. Chicolo, another big guy as well.
Right, and I mean, I don't expect them to address position with their first 2 picks. Talking about the Steelers. So then you're looking at fourth round. Potentially being there, and if you don't get one there, you get what you get after that, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a late round, last pick or 2 flyer. I could see that possible. I'll be keeping an eye on where Colbert and Brandon Hunter at, because that might be where they dip into one of those max schools again for some sort of edge rusher. But it's not going to be any sort of significant impact in terms of adding to that. It's going to be Dupree and Watt, and that's what they're going to rely on, as they should, because those guys are getting paid. Well, Watt will get paid, not yet, but Dupree will be getting paid on the tag or on a long-term deal to play a ton and be counted on to have another great season.
Look, you would think that if you're going to get an edge a little bit later too, it'd be one of these kids that played in one of these All-Star games, right?
Yeah, that's generally what the history says, that they're going to be playing in something. So maybe I'll throw out some names later on for free agency. Again, I really don't have any sort of name. Last thing I would say, well, a couple things I guess I should say with Tuzar Skipper. I mean, obviously we'll see what he can do in year two. A guy that obviously turned so much buzz his rookie year, and I'm glad he's back. But we have to see that translate and how we can take that step forward in year two. But there really could be a great opportunity for Ola and Skipper and some late round pick or UDFA to come in and fight for that number three spot, and that'll be a good battle. But it is a little worrying because you kind of don't know what your depth is going to be behind Watt and Dupree.
Don't be surprised if they pick up a guy here in the next 6-7 weeks out of the XFL, maybe a top
Mm.
one of the top edges come out. Because look, there's nothing on this depth chart right now,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean,
Well, I mean, Ola's played. I mean, you know something about Ola.
right.
He
Well,
has played.
I mean, you got a couple of unknowns basically in Ola and Skipper right now at this point. So, I mean, I don't think you can go into camp with just that.
Right. No, I agree. I think they'll add somebody else, but it's not going to be a top guy. Obviously, I think we both agree on that.
Right.
So yeah, then we'll see about that going forward. And the other thing I was going to say with that linebackers, and I've said the stat before, but I'll mention it again since we're talking about the position, is I'm so happy this team is kind of wised up and they've just focused on Dupree and Watt rushing forward and not dropping those guys into coverage so much. Watt, his rookie year, dropped into coverage 37% of the time. Dupree's peak was like 25% of the time. Last year, they were both under 10% of the time dropping into coverage. So just glad they're wising up, letting those guys go forward and play to their strengths.
Absolutely. We now see too how important it is to be able to get pass rush with just four.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If there's one thing that we've learned the last two seasons, it's that. And boy, if both those guys can stay healthy,
Mm-hmm.
on the edge there, and look, it's hard not to be optimistic overall. Looking at this 2020 defense, they're going to lose Javon Hargrave there, but not too much else that they should lose defensively.
Right, and that's why I think you advocate for keeping Dupree because some people say is it too much money? Do you trust the 1 year production? That whole thing, but you've invested so much in this defense. You've been so patient with Dupree. You've waited so long to build this thing up into an elite unit, and it is. And you'd hate to let that fall apart in one season, basically.
Right.
Speaking of free agency, I want to throw out there one name at you. Is it not outside linebacker, but just overall, since I mentioned it, and I'll have a whole free agency kind of wish list closer to the start of the new league year. But we kind of talked about it on Twitter, at least you and I, Dave. Max Garcia, he's a guard center from Florida. That's somebody. When I talk about like low-level free agents for Steelers, those are the type of guys that I'm talking about. Just guys are going to be just the cheapest players possible. Garcia did not play an offensive snap last year. He was rehabbing off a torn ACL suffered in 2018. Got activated off PUP midway through the year in Arizona. But that's the kind of guy the Steelers are probably going to like because he's versatile. He played center in college. He's played guard in the NFL. He's got some good size. The Steelers had a pro day dinner with him. So those are the type of names that I'm talking about when it comes to Steelers free agents. Just these really low-level guys, maybe coming off of injury, maybe didn't do a whole lot last year for one reason or another, that can come in on a really, really inexpensive deal and try to compete as depth for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and look, I remember writing that up a couple years back when Tony, what's his name?
Del Signor?
No, Tony, the draft guy. Always,
I don't.
I'm drawing a blank what his name is, but
What is he? Is he right for?
Now for the Pro Football Network or whatnot.
Tony Pauline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tony Pauline was the guy that I think originally had reported that during the pro day down there, and Garcia definitely profiles what the Steelers would look for as a backup guard / center, a guy that come in and obviously has some experience and can compete. That if he got beat out, it wouldn't be the end of the world either.
Right. And I think he signed for $2 million in Arizona last year on a 1 year deal, and you can probably be a minimum salary kind of guy considering he didn't played like 30 snaps in special teams, and that was it last year. So I was going through a list of free agent kind of wish list, and I got to go through it some more. But you guys are not going to like the list, but that's what you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, it's going to be. You want to talk about extreme bottom of the barrel kind of guys? That's what Kevin Colbert's going to be looking for this year. Yeah, you might get a wide receiver in there. Yeah, you might get an edge in there somewhere, but they're not going to be big names and they're not going to be big dollar names. That's for sure.
I got a couple receivers on that list, and again, people are not going to like the names I suggest, but you have to look as small as possible given the cap situation for this team. All right, Dave. I wanted to get your opinion since it was kind of the talk of the weekend, shifting away from the NFL into the XFL. And I like the product, but I feel like people are maybe overhyping it a little too much. And so what are your thoughts on how this league went for its first week?
Yeah, look, I mean, we went through this kind of with the AAF as well too. The initial buzz of the first week. One thing there is we saw, I think, more scoring, right? You know, it seemed like the AAF they just struggled to move the football. The quarterback play wasn't as good. Not that the quarterback play was as exceptional this past weekend, but I thought it was a little bit better there. And look, I mean, the teams were able to move the football. Teams were able to, for the most part, except for I think that last game, were able to put some points up on the board there. It got my attention. The kickoff rules and the punt rules really got my attention there. I like those. I like the extra point choices that you have. I like the moving clock. Look, I don't think people want to spend their off seasons on Saturday and Sunday having 3 hour 45-minute games. If they can get these things kind of whittled down, which looks like they're able to do, should be good. Will the initial ratings and attendance numbers be the highest of the year? Probably. But it was enough there to get my attention. It's too bad Landry Jones wasn't able to play.
Right. He was healthy enough, I guess, to dress, but
yeah,
enough practice reps in there. That was a great article they had on Landry Jones the other day.
It really was.
He was in construction. I didn't know that. He was working construction basically after the Steelers cut him just to kind of do something, have a job, and have some sort of purpose. And so happy he's back in the XFL. Hopefully he can get a shot in the NFL again. But yeah, I mean, the XFL, I mean, I liked it. I think some of the things are innovative. I think that kickoff rule is something the NFL may adopt maybe 5 years from now to, as opposed to banning kickoffs in general, which I think would be a terrible idea, having that new rule, basically the players line up 5 yards apart. That helps kind of cut down on some of those big car crashes that have plagued kickoffs for so long now. But I just worry about, we said the same things about the AAF as you mentioned. It's so exciting, it's so different, it's so quirky. They got an Xbox controller. It's really, if that's what you're focusing in on, like, wow, they got an Xbox controller to look at the film and the reviews. I mean, that's really not anything. I think people are just trying to hype it for the sake of hyping. I mean, it was kind of cool, but as you said, what are the ratings going to be like next week? With me, I don't know how it was for you with the AAF. After that first week, I really didn't tune in that much. Occasionally, if it was on, I might see something on Twitter, but I lost interest pretty quickly. And so I wonder if the same path will be taken with the XFL, because it's not radically different than what the AAF was doing or, anything like that. So that's my worry with them, just that long-term sustainability.
Look, and I'm not the prime person to be asking here, because if it's football, I'm going to have it on my TV.
Okay.
Now am I going to set the clocks by it? Probably not, but I'm usually home when those games are going on anyway. We'll see what happens with the rest of the masses here. I think the average attendance, something like 14,000 or something.
Was it? I'm guessing that's better than the AAF.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit better there, and I think the ratings, at least the peak level, were good there. We'll see what happens when they get into the second and third week there. Look, I still think that they're going to have to find a way to get the NFL back up overseas. You
think? I don't know. I mean, is that really going to be popular enough? Is that sustainable too? I know NFL Europe lasted for a long time, but I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
for a market.
Look, make no mistake about it. Because of we live in a world now where all the sports are on TV.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. Yeah. So it's not like it was when, say, the XFL first came out. The first go around there. Or when Arena first hit, many moons ago, you really didn't have a huge selection of the kind of choices there. So now you can turn on. Look, I mean, I can turn my phone on and watch any hockey game that I want to tonight, and then have it projected right on my TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's where we're at now. So, being as how people have all these choices to watch, maybe a prime NBA game versus a prime NCAA. Remember that this past weekend was Duke versus North Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't that happening kind of at the same time as one of those XFL games?
I think so. The second one, yeah.
Right. So, you're going to have that weekly kind of competition on top of it. We'll see. I mean, look, I'm obviously not getting my hopes up about this, but I did enjoy the football. And I think
Mm-hmm.
if the football is good, people will watch it.
Yeah.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, no, I think you're looking at probably a better product right now than the AAF, and I think they probably have a better financial plan. That's obviously the whole thing. It's all about money. I mean, if you could have a good product, you'd have good football, but if it's not making money, you don't have a chance, and that's what doomed the AAF. I don't know. I feel like it has to be. It's not quite different enough to really keep that interest for fans long term. Maybe it is, and I hope it is. I hope that everyone is able to keep their job and make this thing a success. That would be fantastic for the players, the league, and football as a whole. But I'm just not convinced after 1 week that it's going to have that long term sustainability.
Maybe they'd be better off playing these games like on Friday night. When is there? Saturday and Sunday. Obviously, you have other choices. This time of year where you'll be watching, hockey or NBA stuff or college basketball stuff and all like that. Obviously, I don't know, maybe a different night of the week or something, or putting them on at night would make a
Mm-hmm.
difference in there. I don't know. Well, I do like the rules. Look, another thing, Greg Olson did a fantastic. I don't know if you watched the game that he did the color on. I thought Greg Olson did a fantastic job on the color on the game that he did.
Well, I think he's about to sign with somebody, right? He's visiting Seattle, Washington. It sounds like he's going to make a decision he's going to continue playing in the NFL. He's going to make a decision, it sounds like, this week.
Right, he's going to have a future after his playing career is
Mm-hmm.
over with.
Absolutely. So anyway, I'm glad the XFL had a good week, rooting for it going forward, just not fully convinced yet. Last thing I wanted to note, Dave, I had an article this morning. I'll just talk about it really briefly. You can check out the whole article on SteelersDepot.com. Had a lot of fun researching this topic. The Steelers that rebroke the color barrier. We know that Ray Kemp was the first black Steeler to play in 1933. He actually played 4 games, which I did not know. I knew he played 3 games and then got cut, but he actually was re-signed for the regular season finale, which I had no idea. So I was looking at it last night. But then, I always had this question of who was the first African American player to reintegrate in the NFL when they did that back in the 40s and 50s. And we knew there was one name. His name was Jack Spinks, from a fullback in 1952, was drafted in the 11th round of the 52 draft. But there were 6 other players that were part of that training camp roster, and we highlighted those players in the article today. So if you want to check it out, look at the little piece of Steelers history, answer some questions that I had for the longest time. You can check that out on Steelers Depot.
Another article by Bleacher Report's not having a great week, or week and a half or 2 weeks when it comes to Steelers related stuff. Some of these guys, they get to write this stuff, man. I just don't know. But this Brad Gagnon wanted some attention evidently this week, and boy, he got it. He has an article up on Bleacher Report. It's time for the Steelers to cut ties with Big Ben, find quarterback in 2020 free agency. Oh Lord, you go through and read some of his stuff. Very results biased. First and foremost, obviously, look, it does not look like a good decision with the Steelers and Ben, because obviously Ben missed almost all of this past season because of the elbow injury. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of angst and kind of wondering will he be able to come off of that elbow injury, but there's nothing to lead us to believe that he's not going to be able to. So to boil down the Steelers, in fact, it's kind of comical. It's kind of his final paragraph here. The spoiler here, of course, is that the Steelers won't do it, meaning parting ways with Ben. Well, duh. Here's what I don't get. They'll stubbornly and pridefully stick with their washed-up quarterback, partly because they're still not ready to let go of a franchise legend who is obviously popular with the fan base, and partly because they'd be too embarrassed to admit that 2019 contract extension was an error. Boy, it's sensationalized much.
Yeah, he got real self-righteous. Because doesn't he say, like, what a shame at the end of that? Isn't that how he ends the article?
Yeah, and then that's a shame. Yeah.
Yeah, very self-righteous, very, very strange angle.
And the guys he wants the Steelers to cut Roethlisberger for, the Steelers could try to trade for Cam Newton, who would cost less than $20 million as a bridge.
Oh, that's it? Just less than $20 million?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then he goes on to say, or use their second-round draft pick on a potential long-term option. All right, well, let's assume that Jordan Love, Jake Fromm, Jacob Eason, or he got Jalen Hurts in here. This guy, just is not watched any tape either on these guys to be the potential. So he still wants a gap there because he says potential long-term option. So he wants a gap there in year one. Newton is also worn down and coming off but he goes on to say that Newton's worn down and coming off of an injury.
But they should trade for him.
And then alternatively, Brady, Breeze, Dak Prescott, Rivers, Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Tannehill, Winston, and Marcus Mariota are all scheduled to become unrestricted. What does he think these guys are going to be free?
Yeah, it's silly. Obviously, I know every Steeler fan knows how silly it is. I mean, I don't even care about an opinion like that. I try not to worry about that too much.
And he goes on to highlight Pittsburgh would free up $8.5 million in cap space. Now, where is freeing up $8.5 million in cap space and just cutting the legs out from underneath you, a franchise quarterback? Because look, even if you had replacement cost and in a rookie roster displacement, then you're down to saving just $8 million, and you're pretty much locked into the fact that Mason Rudolph will be your starting quarterback. To save $8.5 million. All right. Here's the other thing. Criticizing the Steelers for extending Roethlisberger last year. For starters, a lot of people forget this. It only cost them an additional $3 million in cap space last year to extend Roethlisberger. So his cap hit last year went up $3 million by getting the extension done with him. You know what would you be doing right now had you not extended Roethlisberger?
You'd be extending Roethlisberger now.
You'd have to probably and look, don't hand me that Roethlisberger would be cheaper because of the elbow injury. You didn't know that. And you cannot say, well, They if they wouldn't have signed Roethlisberger, that they would get him cheaper now because of the elbow injury, because you didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So at this point right now, you would have a quarterback entering or about to become an unrestricted free agent. All right? So what are the ways to prevent a quarterback from hitting unrestricted free agency?
You're going back to the old franchise tag.
Right. So now you're probably going to have to place the franchise tag on Ben.
And bye-bye Dupree.
Then bye-bye. Well, look, you could put the transition tag on Dupree, but that's flimsy as hell. You'd still lose him anyway that way. So. And
you don't get a comp pick for that, right? You transition tag?
Right.
Okay, so you'd probably lose Dupree and also get nothing for him.
Right. So, I suppose you could put the transition tag on and hope to try to maybe trade him, but, why would a team do that when they sign him right out from underneath you? Right. Via the transition tag. So, and once again, don't hand me that Roethlisberger would be cheaper or this, that, and the other because of the elbow injury, because you did not know that was going to happen. All right. Mm-hmm. So you could have, for all we know, Roethlisberger could have had another Roethlisberger year, and then you're looking at placing a franchise tag on him, and then what? Look how bad your cap situation would be. You think trying to afford a $16 million franchise tag on Bud Dupree would be tough?
Mm-hmm.
Try a what, $30 million? What is a franchise tag supposed to be this year on quarterbacks?
Probably about 33 million, I think. I think it's what Dak might get if he's tagged.
I haven't been paying attention to that because I don't need to.
Right. Obviously what that article was very just wrong in every way, but it's just some random.
Almost $27 million franchise tag for a quarterback this year.
Yeah. You wouldn't be able to make it work. Again, the article was wrong and silly, but it's just one guy, obvious outsider, doesn't know the situation.
But there's people eating it up, though.
I know, but
You
I
know?
don't know. I just don't lose any sleep over what some random guy says.
Yeah. Well, this guy wanted attention. I gave it to him.
Yeah, you got it. All right, Dave. Let's give our inbox some attention here. Get to some reader emails here to close out the show.
All right, from Richard Hudspeth writes in, who are some possible trades the Steelers could leverage for extra picks? A couple come to mind. A, Mike Hilton is worth at least a second round. Woo. Ugh. McDonald for a fourth. Ugh.
No.
You're mighty optimistic, Richard.
Yeah, I don't think there really are any trade candidates. I was asked about that a while back. There's no one that's obvious jumps to mind, someone that's expendable, someone that's cheap enough and has that kind of value that you'd be willing to part with. I mean, Hilton has value, but I just don't have any interest in trading him. There's really not any name that comes to mind.
He goes on to write, yeah, look, there's no way you're going to get a second for Hilton. No way you're going to get a fourth for McDonald, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, is there any other name, or would you have any appetite to trying to deal any current Steeler under contract?
The only thing that comes to mind, and it would be kind of it'd be related to Bud Dupree and a team trading for a tag player.
Okay.
But even then, that's the closest I can come up with. And even that's not very feasible.
I mean, could you flip Jalen Samuels for a 7th-round pick to some team? I don't know.
I wouldn't. It wouldn't hit on my radar either way.
Yeah. Anyway, so obvious answer I think we're getting to is really not possible.
Second question he's got is, what is the plan for how they afford everyone next year when TJ is up? Boy, we're still trying to worry about how they're going to afford everybody this year. And now you're asking about TJ next year. Come ask me that question at the same time next year. Look, it's obviously going to be tough because you're going to have once again you're going to have a quarterback on potentially final year with a large cap number. There with Ben, you're going to have Pouncey final year, Hayden final year.
Mm-hmm.
Probably going to have Hayward on extended by then. We'll see what happens with Bud Dupree and getting him extended, and then obviously going to have to maybe do Juju on top of it. So yes, look, it's going to be tough. Anytime you've got a franchise quarterback, you got the sins of that come along with it.
Yeah, and that's why you're seeing this team be so aggressive right now, because they know this is the window to win. These are when you have that combination of a franchise quarterback with enough young, cheap, drafted talent before they start getting expensive and their contracts start expiring. So that's why you're seeing this team go all in, and that's why this window is 2020 and 2021, because after that, it gets really murky, the long-term future of this team on a lot of different levels.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Moving along here from Wes. Hey, Dave, I just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I have to say I liked it more than The Irishman. It brought back many memories. If you haven't already seen it, check it out. You'll be glad you did. Tarantino does it again. Okay, Wes.
You a Tarantino fan? You like any Tarantino?
Look, I mean, Pulp, didn't he do Pulp Fiction?
Did he? I'm not sorry. Before I shouldn't be talking about movies. I'm sorry to drag you into this. I don't know. I like Pulp Fiction. I don't know. I think he directed it. I don't know.
I'm not. Yeah, he directed that. What else did Quentin Tarantino? I'm not big on being able to name off, guys, directors or whatnot. But I like some of his stuff there. Maybe I will check that one out there on the trip here. Let's see. Jonathan Mason writes in, question, Alex and Dave, is it too much wishful thinking to say that Matt Canada and Bryan McClendon will help Randy with this offense, or is it actually a realistic possibility? I know it comes down to play call and execution, but I am talking about overall design scheme. Thanks as always, Jonathan. Look, first and foremost here, I don't think you guys are giving enough credence to the handicap that Randy had last year with the quarterback situation and the injuries to Juju and James Conner. I don't think enough. I don't think Randy's being given enough rope when it comes to that kind of stuff. Now, is there a lot of things that Randy could do better with the pre-snap motions and the play action? Absolutely. But, I think you got to have all of your pieces and parts there before before drawing any hard conclusions. And look, Matt Cannon and Brian McClendon, in my opinion, will only help.
Mm-hmm.
All right, in this situation here. But really, I think it's hard to make hard judgments on Randy based on what happened last year. I know you said the opening scripts, obviously could have been better, and the fact that this team scored really, no points on opening drives, and of course had the turnovers in there as well too. But we're talking about 16. You only got 16 shots at that. And if you turn a couple of them over thanks to execution problems, you're already whittling that down, on top of it. Should they had at least one or two drives that they scored a touchdown on? Absolutely. Yeah.
Or a field goal.
Or field goal.
They did it once, and that was off a 49ers turnover.
Right. But I still don't think, like I said, not having a franchise quarterback was huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, putting that aside, just forget, not even looking at it and evaluating Fichtner, but just do you think the presence of those guys that have OC experience is going to let them help Fichtner more in cobbling together a game plan? Do you think that could be the case?
I don't see why it wouldn't.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, it's always hard to gauge exactly what the level of influence is going to be. I mean, I think those hirings were maybe partly that, but also, I think just the focus on the college game, letting these guys that are just coming out of college football be able to coach these guys that are young, let these guys be able to play right away. I mean, you got a lot of youth, and you're going to count on some rookies next year for sure, because you're not going to have free agency to get a veteran type guy in all likelihood. So I think there's a lot of value in getting guys from the college game who understands the game, how it's evolved, and how these young guys, how they learn and develop and mature. So I think that's really maybe the reason why you're seeing this team, look so heavily to the college ranks for their coaching staff. And so I think that's where the real value for those guys is going to come from.
Look, it can't be worse, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really can't be worse. I mean, last year was rock bottom. So obviously it will be better in 2020. To what extent, we're not sure. But you would expect if this defense can play at about the same level, that the offense will play well enough to really make this team a Super Bowl contender.
All right, Lenny from Cleveland writes in, Dave and Alex, I know this is not going to be a very popular opinion, but I do not think the Steelers should re-sign Bud Dupree. To start, I'm concerned that we will see the Bud from his first 4 years with us. Secondly, I really want Steelers to invest in the tight end position with some of that Bud money, and here's my reason. Last time we went to the Super Bowl, we actually had a playmaker at the tight end position. The front office needs to recognize this. This year, Brady loses Gronk, no Super Bowl, and look at the two teams in this year's Super Bowl. Both had playmakers at the tight end position. Advice to Kevin Colbert: sign Austin Hooper and draft an outside linebacker in the second round. That all sounds good, kind of written out there, but look, I mean, do I think teams in today's NFL need to have tight ends and use them in the game plan? Yeah, absolutely, I do. Without a doubt. Is it a prerequisite? Is that the reason why Tom Brady and the Patriots didn't make the Super Bowl this year, is losing Gronk? No, I think it goes a lot, goes beyond that. As far as Dupree, you haven't given me a good reason of why you're concerned about Bud Dupree there. And look, nobody was more critical than Alex and I, Bud Dupree, heading into this past season. But what he put on tape was a lot different than what we saw in those first 4 years. A lot. Go ahead.
That's 100% accurate, but I think that's his point. He's saying it was so different, so you're giving him this money just based off of that 1 year and not based off of the prior 4 years, and that's his concern. Right or wrong, that's what his concern is.
Well,
how would you address that?
I think it just took Bud forever for the light to come on.
Mm-hmm.
And to get healthy, all right?
Yeah.
And look, I mean, he was doing things this past year. If he just starts running around the edge, it's going to be super obvious. If he's not doing the things that he did this past season right out of the chute, it's going to be super obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really think health was the big reason, one of the driving reasons why he struggled so much those first 4 years. And when you saw him healthy last year, you saw the best version of Bud Dupree. So is there a little bit of a risk to it? I mean, I guess when you really are basing it off of just 1 year, but this has always been a high effort type of guy that's always worked hard. It's been really tough, played through a lot of injuries. So I don't have those concerns about Dupree, because I think in terms of his makeup and what he's done through his career and showing that toughness and that just tenacity and just high effort type player tells me he's going to play hard even after the contract. And maybe that production will dip a little bit just because naturally production can go up and down. But I think it can still be a really valuable asset to this team. And the other point I would say is, yes, this team, when they won Super Bowls, they've had good tight ends. But when they won Super Bowls, they've had great pass rush. They've had great edge rushers. Switching to a 3-4, show me a Super Bowl winning team that didn't have a dynamic duo at outside linebacker. You can't. So I think that you have to try to keep together Dupree and TJ Watt.
I like Austin Hooper, but I think he's probably going to get overpaid.
He's going to get paid a lot. I mean, I don't know what you classify as an overpay, but him and Henry are going to get tons of money.
Yeah. Let's see here. Paul Brown on Bryson Hopkins. Dave, I may be a little biased, but the Steelers, whenever somebody starts off, they might be a little biased. They're usually a lot biased. No offense, Paul. I may be a little biased, but the Steelers need to go get fellow Boiler. I see.
Yeah.
Paul, there we go. We fellow Boilermakers. So these two went to Purdue here. Need to go get fellow Boilermaker Bryson Hopkins in the second round in the upcoming draft. While he isn't, now here's where the excuse comes. Here's the but. Paul, don't get mad at me. I'm just having some fun with you here. While he isn't the best blocker, I love his ability to catch the ball in traffic. Hey, Paul, what'd you think about his drops? What'd you think about his high drops? If you haven't watched, in my opinion, his best tape is from Wisconsin loss on 11-23. Also, Dave, as huge Steelers fan, being from Cincinnati, I find myself following the Bengals by nature of being in the city. Do you see yourself following the Raiders a little closer now that they're in their backyard? Absolutely not. Look, I follow the whole NFL, but my job is to follow the Steelers, and I am mega concentrated on everything the Steelers do every year. And look, I mean, I have to pay attention really to what happens throughout, the whole NFL. So no, I don't pay any more attention to the Raiders now being in Las Vegas than I did with them being in Oakland there. Look, I get it. I think you are a little bit too biased, Paul, because I think you really need to go turn on that tape and pretend that who's Purdue's biggest arch rival, I guess.
Oh, God, I don't. Do they have rivals? Ohio State, I have no idea. Northwestern, I have no idea.
All right, pretend you're a fan of that other team and then break down Bryson Hopkins. Paul, go look at them drops and tell me what you think about those drops. I like the kid. I just don't know if I'd like him 49 overall.
I'm on Team Paul here. I like Hopkins. I think he'll be on the team's radar. You know who another Purdue alum is? Randy Fichtner. Boilermakers are all going to be all peas in the pod.
There you go there. Another kid that I signed up to break down is this Jacob Breland. You know much about Breland coming out of Oregon?
I don't. Tell me about him.
He's another kid who's going to be at I haven't.
What are your initial?
Initial thoughts is this another tight end that can block. Now he lost a good portion of his this past season to an injury there, but didn't obviously light it up during his career, statistical reception wise. But it looks like he can catch the football. It looks like he can block as well too. Not only out in space, but at the end of the line of scrimmage, and nice size, 6'5", 250 on him as well too. So I think he received.
Is that official or is that listed?
That's listed on the Oregon team site and all. So he looks every bit of it.
Yeah.
I think he's another one that got a combine invite there, so that should mean something there on top of it. But that's another one I want to look at here. I'm still, as you can tell, I'm not in love with the top of this tight end class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody that separates himself from anybody else. I think the combine will maybe help be that last step to create the separation in that group.
Andrew writes in, hey, Dave and Alex, looking over early boards, it seems like offensive tackle is a deep position for pick 49. 4 to 5 offensive tackles likely to go in round 1. That might be a little bit high, but I mean,
it's a really good class at the top.
But that Alabama tackle, whew.
Yeah, Worf's from Iowa.
There are some good tackles at the top of this class. Realistically, right now, guys like Austin Jackson out of USC, Prince Tega, out of Auburn, TCU, Niang, Jones out of Houston, Wilson out of Georgia, Adams out of Washington could be sitting at 49. Would you go for more of a pure offensive tackle if it is the best player available, a potential right tackle year one who could move to left tackle next year? Value just seems really good there. Let's see. Well, what do you look? I mean, it will be hard for them to turn their head on some of these tackles.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know where I would come in on that. Obviously, you would have, assuming the Fowler gets kicked to left guard, you still have a core four who you've developed and you probably want to see him start. Fight with Banner at right tackle, still have Villanueva left tackle. What is the team's intention with Villanueva? Do they plan on doing a long-term deal with him? If they do, that probably really kind of kicks the idea of tackle till later on in the draft. So my guess is no, but point taken because the value might be really strong.
If you're going to get a tackle there at 49, it's one that I think that you think can come in right away and potentially start at right tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I just wonder where they're in.
Can you imagine what spending a look? I mean, you already don't have a first round pick. You're going to hope that your second round pick can contribute to some degree this year. And boy, if you especially with him being a second round player, he's only going to be on a 4-year contract. So now you're potentially whittling yourself down to a 3-year player.
Yeah.
And we all know that if he is worth his salt, how tackles get paid. So, are you going to turn around and let him walk because he's too expensive? You know what I'm saying?
Sure. No, yeah, I understand.
Tackles look a lot better than guards as far as depth-wise here, especially early on, the top end of this draft, at least what I've found so far. So, yeah, it will be hard for them to turn their head, I think.
Right, but I mean, historically, the last 5 years or so, I should say, first and second round picks in Pittsburgh, they got to play right away. Like the third round and on, guys can sit. That's kind of been common, or at least not play a lot. But first and second round picks, they have to be playing immediately and give you that impact, especially in a year where you want to maximize this window. I do wonder, and I mentioned this idea the other day. I'll kind of make it more concrete now. Is there any chance? Let's assume that Foster gets cut, Finney's gone, that they just keep Fowler at right tackle and draft a plug and play left guard? Is that at all possible?
Sure, I think it's possible, but who is that guy?
I mean, I don't know, a Damian Lewis type maybe or someone like that. I'm not sure of the name, but I just wonder if that's – because I know we've been really so hyper-focused on, okay, well, of course Fowler's going to move to left guard. And I still think that's the most likely and most logical thing to happen, but I don't want to make it this guarantee either because we don't know exactly what the approach is going to be.
I mean, I'm not gonna say no. It's slam dunk. Fowler's moving.
Yeah. I just want to point the counter.
My biggest question is if it's not going to be Foster or Finney, you obviously would have to get one in the draft. I'm struggling to find a top. I'm struggling to find a guard that I like at 49.
Yeah, I just want to at least play those devil's advocate and throw that out there.
Now, I like that. I like the kid from Georgia, but I don't think I like him at 49. I like that kid that we profiled this morning on the site out of Kentucky, but I don't think I like him at 49 either.
But in this scenario, it would help preserve your offensive line depth, though, because then you have a core four Banner as backups still, and you have really good tackle depth, and maybe you draft another late all-round pick for interior offensive line with guys like Gray coming back, and maybe that helps out your depth situation.
And the only thing is, I mean, I like the LSU kid a little bit, but I mean, from what the Steelers normally like,
a little small.
He doesn't fit,
Yeah, but I mean, I would be very comfortable with drafting Damian Lewis. I mean, forget about the size that Duke can play, but I understand what you're saying.
All right, Evan Furnish writes in, hey, Dave and Alex, all the recent buzz around the Hall of Fame made me stop and think about the state of the current Steelers roster. I feel as if there are many players that are Hall of Fame caliber on the Steelers roster, but the lack of late playoff Super Bowl runs will keep the players that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame out, other than Ben. What is your list of Steelers that make the Hall of Fame without Super Bowl victory? What is your list of Steelers that make the Hall of Fame with the Super Bowl victory? Well, first and foremost, I mean, I think it goes without saying, Evan, that Ben Roethlisberger, look, after Alan Faneca gets in, which we hope might be next year, Ben might be the next guy.
Yeah, it's not going to be Heinz Ward. Yeah, it'll probably be Ben. I don't think Super Bowl wins are really going to impact other positions aside from quarterback. I mean, it gets weighted a little bit, but it's not going to really, I think, be a deciding factor for David DeCastro, for example. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think DeCastro's on a path for it. If Hayward keeps playing the way he's playing, he may work into that conversation. You know, if TJ Watt long term, that's someone that looks like potentially a long time from now being in that conversation. But I think DeCastro is somebody that has a chance in 10 years.
Boy, Minka's got project Minka out. Boy,
Yeah, I mean, great start to his career.
I mean, way early for that, obviously. DeCastro's on a nice path. I think people will. I don't know how you feel about Pouncey. I mean, he's got the All Pros there, but
Sure.
sometimes you know the warts on your own a little bit better than others do. You know?
Well, yeah, Pouncey, 8-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All Pro. Maybe another All Pro. I don't know if he's going to get one in his career. I just, with some of that time lost to injury, I wonder if how much that's gonna hurt his chances. It probably does a little bit. But I think he's worthy of it. I'm not quite sure if he's actually going to get in. But maybe we can revisit that when his career is all said and done.
The way they're crapping all over Faneca will make DeCastro's path tough. You know, especially without a Super Bowl. You know,
need more All-Pro teams for these guys. That's I think going to be key for those two guys.
Obviously, Alex and I are not big on Heinz Ward getting in. Who else on the current? I mean, Joe Hayden's not going to get in.
No, I think those are their names. I mean, obviously guys like Watt and Minka. I mean, potentially, but that's so far away that who knows what can happen. But they still have 10 years left in their career, and 15. We're talking 15 years by the time we're even, they could be on the ballot. So it's hard to really project with those guys. I think DeCastro, Pouncey, obviously Ben are really kind of the guys right now.
Hayward would have to have a next 4 or 5 years, just duplicates, I think, of what he just did.
Right, but he's coming on strong, and since they designated him as a defensive tackle, it's really helped him out with the All-Pro, and Pro Bowl kind of stuff, and that might be kind of a last couple-year push for him. So I wonder if they would have listed him as a D tackle throughout his whole career, if that would have changed anything at all for him,
or let him, got him more involved early in his career, and not have him two gap.
That's true. Yeah, I didn't start till his third year, so yeah, that's a good point. Hayward, I mean, it's a late push. It's probably not, but if he keeps playing the way he's playing now for another 3 seasons. I mean, the dude might finish with like 75 career sacks for an interior defensive lineman. It's nothing to sneeze at.
Right. Poor Aaron Smith. All those years I mean, what he did so damn well, and it makes you wonder how well he would have been able to do had he been able to not two gap.
Right. Oh, well, he played a great play. Recognized in Pittsburgh, at least.
Yeah, Casey Hampton's another one. Just nose tackles, just no respect.
I love that Casey Hampton, like Aaron Smith lost a ton of weight after his playing days. Casey Hampton's not dropped a pound since his playing days.
He's still big snack.
Big snack.
For sure. All right, I think we've gone through most of these, Alex, here. So with that, I'm gonna be off the rest of the week here. So Alex and I will be back starting next week. We're going to do Tuesday and Friday, I think. Right, Alex? That sound good? Okay.
So we'll be back next Tuesday.
We will be back next Tuesday. Will be the next episode. I think you're doing some Monday night. What are you doing Monday night on YouTube?
Yeah, I'll have a live stream tonight on Steelers Depot. I'll post that for Tuesday so people can check that out. So we do about an hour. They'll start around 7 p.m. Eastern time is usually when I'll start it on there. I might have to do things a little differently this week, but I'll have the stream tonight on YouTube, my YouTube channel, doing a little question and answer.
All right, and obviously we'll be trying to keep you as entertained as possible through these slow periods here and all. But until Tuesday of next week, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, now is a perfect time to do so. Go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button up right navigational bar, and if you would like an ad-free version of the site, please go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the ad-free button. For $25 for 1 calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, and that's been very, very popular for the people that have already signed up for that. It's been quite a few of that as well, too. We appreciate all the support, and until next Tuesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.